Well, a good Tuesday morning. We have our 11 a.m. advisory in from the National Hurricane Center on Hurricane Milton. And the amount that the storm has just changed in a mere 36 to 48 hours is very, very drastic. So as of early yesterday morning, Milton was a Category 1 storm, and it rapidly intensified all the way up to Category 5 status. By the time we were in last evening, Milton's peak for winds was 180 miles an hour and a central pressure below 900 millibars at 898. So now we have seen a weakening process with Milton. It has undergone what we call an eye wall replacement cycle. It's basically where our more outer bands of thunderstorms start to strengthen. They start to close in on that eye wall that's already formed, kind of choke it out, but it undergoes a weakening process. So the winds did pop on down to about 145 miles an hour as of the latest advisory. But now that that process is complete, Milton is still forecasted to continue to strengthen over the next couple of days. So right now, as it stands, all the timestamps that we see from the National Hurricane Center, we don't see it regaining that Category 5 status, but obviously we do have advisories in the middle of the timestamps that you do see. So Milton could very well pop up as a Category 5 once again, but Milton is still forecast to make landfall as a high-end Category 3 storm. So whether it's a Category 3, 4, or 5 at landfall, obviously that would have gustier winds associated with it, but this is still going to be a major hurricane upon landfall, and we are continuing to see that ever so steadily trimming on down of the cone, the possible paths that that center of circulation may take. So the consensus still is that Tampa Bay area really going to be somewhere around there in terms of landfall, but I have seen a lot of ensemble models that are trending a little bit further to the south, which would be good news in terms of storm surge for the Tampa Bay area. You'd get those winds on the top with that counterclockwise rotation that would actually blow the water out of the bay as opposed to in. But still, we're going to get a better idea of that as we get closer and closer to landfall. And right now, another change that we have seen over the past day or so, we're really looking at a landfall sometime around Wednesday evening into the overnight hours on Thursday. So the two timestamps we have here as of the latest advisory are Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern and then Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern. So you can definitely see as Milton will move across land, it is expected to weaken, but it's still going to be on the eastern half of Florida as a Category 2 storm. It may be a low-end Category 2. We are expecting some pretty drastic weakening with Milton once it does make landfall, but still sometime Wednesday night into the overnight hours, really looking at an overnight threat for these areas on the western half of the peninsula of Florida in terms of making landfall. So that's where we're going to continue to keep our eye on. The good news is Milton will move out towards the Atlantic Ocean as a Category 1 storm by about 8 p.m. on Thursday, and then continue to trek out into the Atlantic Ocean and weaken and hopefully dissipate and not have any more impacts across the southeastern portion of the United States. So here's the entire cone as of right now. Good to see no Category 5 icons on there anymore, but like I did say, we do have intermediate advisories that do go in between those timestamps. So Milton could pop up as a Category 5 fairly quickly before running into some wind shear that's going to cause it to disorganize. In terms of current watches and warnings, well, the Yucatan Peninsula, the northern edge of it, already in hurricane warnings and tropical storm warnings. So obviously going to see those hurricane force or tropical storm force impacts within the next 36 hours. And now taking it down to South Florida, this extends all the way down towards the Keys as well. All of these areas in a tropical storm warning. And then when we take it up closer to where that cone is going through, this area shaded in the pink, that's going to be your hurricane warning, those hurricane force conditions. The only difference is really wind speeds with that. Tropical storm force warnings, or tropical storm force conditions rather, do run from about 39 to up to 73 miles an hour, and then the hurricane force conditions are 74 plus miles an hour. So this extends all the way from the western end of the Florida Peninsula over to the eastern side of the peninsula. So Tampa, Orlando, all of these areas encompassed around those areas are still going to see those hurricane force conditions, but going to have a widespread impact all across the southeast. Even some tropical storm warnings extending as far north as Jacksonville in Florida, and then tropical storm force watches. This just means the time frame for seeing these force conditions is going to be a little bit later, probably within the next 48 hours. And this extends all the way up the Atlantic coast of Georgia and into South Carolina, so encompassing areas like Savannah and Charleston. So going to have widespread impacts is this storm. And taking a look at our future view model, our graph graph model run. We have been keeping a very close eye on this because this did handle the path of Hurricane Helene here in central Georgia a lot better than the National Hurricane Center cone did. So about 2 p.m. on Wednesday, you can see those outer bands of rain starting to filter into that western edge of the peninsula of Florida and still making landfall somewhere in that Tampa Bay area. The graph model really looks like it's going to have that center of circulation go directly over the Tampa Bay area. So obviously the things that all your local officials are telling you in terms of evacuations, in terms of being prepared, please heed those warnings because Hurricane Milton is continuing to change every single advisory that we do have. And obviously if it is to continue to intensify, maybe that shear doesn't weaken it quite enough because there is still warm water in the Gulf of Mexico. You're definitely going to want to be in a safe space or definitely be further inland, further away from where the most severe impacts are going to be. So taking a look back, some of the headlines with Milton rapidly intensified, like I said, from a Category 1 to a Category 5 yesterday. Now back to a very high-end Category 4. Could very well pop up as a 5, but it is still forecasted to make landfall as a major hurricane, a high-end Category 3 storm. Now, we did see that eye wall replacement cycle overnight last night, and that is finally complete, so we could see a little bit more strengthening with Milton. We're going to have to continue to keep a close eye on that to see how much it will weaken necessarily before landfall. But up here in central Georgia, we're really just looking at increased cloud cover, maybe some showers in our far southeastern counties and some breezy conditions, maybe some wind gusts up to about 30 miles an hour or so, just because of the sheer size of the wind field associated with this hurricane. So we're going to continue to keep a close eye on Milton and obviously, like I said, continue to put or heed those evacuation warnings that local officials have given you. I know the traffic on I-75 trekking further up north is very bad, but still the further away that you can get from the center of this storm, it is going to be all the more wiser decision.